Hey guys. So this video, I'm going to talk about boundaries. I've been thinking a lot lately about boundaries and how it affects us with ourselves and with other people. And I used to be a person that didn't have boundaries. I guess I was taught to not have them and to kind of behave, just do what everybody says, regardless if it makes you feel good or not. And I had been for years. I would say like the past 10 years, I would throw down boundaries, and then because of who um who I loved at the time, I would, you know, let those boundaries down. I always had walls up and then I would let them down for people, and I think those of us who have experienced a lot of negative things in life would be a very boundaried person. And I realized years ago that this kept me from people. And started studying, like I said, self discovery and realizing through helping my clients, as I've stated in other videos, I worked with the homeless population, of learning boundaries. And at first, I wanted to help everybody with everything. And then realizing that I couldn't, and it didn't matter how much I did, you know, at the end of the day, I can't solve everybody's issues and solve everybody's problems. So I became very good with this in at work. But in my home life, I would say I just continued on with trying to set boundaries and then letting them down again so that other people could stay happy. And I think a lot of us have done this for a very long time. And they say, boundaries are there to protect us, and once you start throwing down your boundaries, you see who really cares. Because I know for me personally, I had had so many relationships where I would say, these are my boundaries. And then people would do something and I'd forgive. And, like I've stated before, you can't forget no matter how much you forgive. But then tell somebody, okay, well, I made the exception this time for whatever reason. And in the process, learning that every time I did that, it just enabled people around me to know if we hold out long enough or if we do something, enough, she'll let down her boundary. And so I had a relationship that ended years ago to where I had put down boundaries where I said, I cannot do everything. No, I am not going to do everything. I need my quiet space. I need my safe space. And the person left me. And then I went through this merry-go-round for years of where the person came back and then they did it again. And I would let down my boundaries again, and I think that's where, we teach ourselves self forgiveness, we teach ourselves accountability, because I can clearly look back in my life in several instances to recognize of where I enabled people. We let people know what they can do to us and what they can't. And with me, it really took so much strength inside of me because I had always dealt with this. It's selfish to have boundaries. It's selfish to say no. Even though for years I'd been telling clients, to set down boundaries and that it's okay to say no. But I think sometimes when we get really emotionally attached to someone or fearful of them leaving us, a fear of rejection or fear of abandonment, we let down those boundaries and then we enable them. And then that's where a lot of times we get stuck in this thing of not trusting not only the person, but not trusting ourselves because it leads us to the, oh, I knew better. Now I'm mad at myself again for letting down my boundaries again. And I don't know, I know some people out there learn it the easy way, and I guess I've always been a person that learns it the hard way. But for me, it had taken, you know, my 50th birthday, I sat crying while somebody just sat there and watched me cry and thought it was okay. And I just thought for hours and hours, like, how is this happening? And it was on that day that I realized this is happening now because you've allowed this person to do whatever they want over and over and over again. You've taken down every boundary. Every time you've said, don't do this again, or else I won't put up with it, and then you let down your boundary again because you're afraid of being rejected or you're afraid of being left, then they just do it again and again and again. And then it creates this double thing of you're hurt by that person, but even more so than that, you're hurt at yourself. Like you get mad at yourself because deep down like it did no good to take down a boundary. They didn't respect the boundaries. They see nothing in boundaries. So then it takes a long time for some of us to learn to let go of that, to learn to let go of how we sacrificed ourselves, sacrificed our boundaries, because we thought that somebody else might respect it. We thought that somebody else might love us enough to not cross our boundaries again, to not do something again. So this is just for anybody out there, if you're teaching yourself about boundaries, or if you don't know about boundaries, it's okay to tell people no. It's okay to tell people this is what I'll accept and this is what I won't. Because they do say when you set down boundaries, you'll see who cares. You'll see who sticks around. You'll see who respects you enough to know that that's your boundary. That you won't be, accept being talked to a certain way or treated a certain way. For me, it got to the point where relationships that I had, people thought they could do whatever they wanted to all the time. People thought they could leave me a million times and stay gone and leave me in that rejection and then come back and just do it all over again. And each time knew, oh, well, I pushed her to this point last time and she still, talked to me afterwards, or she still gave some more. Because I would constantly say, that's it. I'm not going to give anymore. I have nothing more to give. And then push myself to, okay, well, maybe if I love them a little bit more, maybe if I show them more empathy, maybe if I show them more compassion, maybe if I try to understand their point of view, maybe if I just do something else, not realizing like that had nothing to do with me. We can't teach people who don't want to learn. We can't teach people respect if they don't respect themselves. All we can do is learn to love ourselves. And boundaries are a form of self-love. And I am completely guilty of looking back through really all of my life, of just carrying it through to adulthood, of people could just do whatever they want to do, as long as they say they love me, then I'll just keep on, letting down my walls and letting down my boundaries. And I've learned now throughout this journey that I've been on that some people, it varies with people about what boundaries you put up and what you don't. I'm a very private person, so my boundary is like my home. I don't let that many people into my home. And then some people might get offended, but that's on them. Um, I'm very private. Well, I'm very boundaried with my time, where I would always tell people, like, I respect other people's time. So I would expect other people to respect mine. And I would say, if you can't respect my time, then I can't make time for you. Because it becomes very one-sided and pushes us into that self-sacrificial where we feel like we have to give in. I recently had, I know in other videos I've complained about my car a lot and trying to get it fixed. And I recently had a mechanic who I've been dealing with for a month that, I would always say, like, I do my part and then I expect people to do their parts. And this person made so many appointments and never showed and would tell me the next day and not show up and not call and not answer text and nothing, to where it finally took yesterday where I was just like, no, I don't believe that you're coming to fix my car, and then I dealt with for a long time is like, well, am I being mean if I tell somebody no thank you? Am I being mean if I don't give people my time? But after you've sat around over and over and over and waited for appointments, I'm sure some of you guys have had that with the cable people, or anytime a doctor's office is like, we'll call you back. That's a boundary when you tell somebody, be respectful of my time. I have this time to this time. And I think part of that too was learning boundaries with my emotions, of knowing who I can let in and who I can't. Because I've always been this open person of just letting people do whatever they wanted, just because I would give them, 10 million benefits of the doubt. Or I would say, they can't help it. But, I've realized within the last year, and especially since my birthday, is, I try to be respectful of people's time, people's feelings, people's needs, people's wants, people's everything. But if I invest into people who don't respect any of that of mine, none of my boundaries, then it's just a setup for failure. And then I would end up getting mad at myself too. Being like, oh, why did this happen again? Well, you know why it happened? Because I let somebody walk all over me for a very long time. I've let people do that to me in my life. I let people treat me like a doormat and then got mad whenever people treated me like a doormat. And it finally took me standing up for myself and saying, with my job, with relationships, like, I am not just here to do all the work. I am not just here to do what everybody else wants me to do while nobody's respectful of me at all. And to be okay with that. Because then I can say, that's on them. If they choose not to respect my boundaries, respect what I have to say, respect my needs, respect my wants, respect my time, then that's a them thing. I always thought it was a me thing. And that if I put another person's part on them, it would be selfishness or something. But that's not the way it is. Part of self-love is teaching people how you want to be treated. And so I hope this helps anybody out there. Keep putting down your boundaries. The right people will respect them. The right people will know that's there for you. And the people who don't care, well, they'll just walk away or get mad. And those aren't your people. Maybe you just haven't met your people yet. Hope you're having a good night, and I'll chat with you soon. Bye.